Good morning to everyone, and thank you so much for joining into this broadcast. My guest this weekend is Mr. Vineet Sambre, who's head of equities at DSP Investment Managers. He's had a very distinguished career, most notably known, of course, for his mid and small cap performance. And a few years back, about 3 years back, actually one of his funds had to stop taking in inflows because it was doing so well, and he was probably wasn't sure if he could give the same kind of returns with the kind of monies he was getting. But Vineet, thank you so much for taking time out this Saturday morning and joining into this broadcast. We're speaking in slightly different circumstances, not as a client and broker here, but more as an interviewer and interviewee. But tell me, how has your journey been so far, right from the time when you started your career till now? Has it turned out that fund management was always the thing that you wanted to do? Has that thought been reaffirmed? How's your journey been so far?
Okay, good morning, Rahul, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for inviting me, Rahul. It's a pleasure to be here on this platform. Talking about my journey, let me tell you that fund management was not something which I had in mind in the beginning. But very clearly, I remember distinctly that what I had in mind, what I wanted to do was to become a chartered accountant. And this I had actually fairly early in my childhood. I had made a decision, and the driver was that I had seen my dad become a chartered accountant. So I think he influenced my decision. So way back when I was, I think 11 years old, in standard 6th, I took that decision to pursue this chartered accountancy, and which fortunately I was able to complete pretty early on. And then only thought after that was that I didn't wanted to actually get into the traditional chartered accountancy type of work, which my dad actually used to do a lot of this audit taxation stuff. But I was more inclined to look at, let's say, role in management consultancy or taxation consultancy. So something which I felt would have been much value added in terms of the quality of work. And then with that in mind, I can say accidentally I got an opportunity to work with CRISIL as a trainee, you may say, for a year. But that actually created a lot of interest in this whole this specter of research and how companies work. I mean, that created a lot of interest, and it was I think really a very good beginning, because it also gave me a very strong background as to looking at the companies, their annual reports, their financials, ratio analysis, and all of that. Having done that early in the early part of my career, then I got an opportunity. I said, "What's the use of this research?" Then as I started understanding, I got a thought that equity, if I take it forward to do equity oriented research, then it will actually yield a much better output, is what I felt. And so I think the journey started with that, starting from a very small sell side broking house, and then joining UTI. And then when I really understood that the most important position is to really manage money, and manage money with a very fundamental approach. So as I said, the good part is that in the beginning of my career, I was able to work with people who were more fundamental in nature, and that actually shaped my thought process. Also, early on, got guidance to read Warren Buffett, read Peter Lynch. So I think that was again a matter of influence. And I think if you just keep joining the dots somewhere, I just had in mind that whatever I do, it has to be the best in terms of and with that in mind, the journey started. And early it was research, and then eventually got into fund management. But as I through that phase, I also realized that it is very important that we fund manager is also acting as a fiduciary of the public money, and real public. When we see the list of our investors, we understand that these are very small individuals, some belong to rural places. I was in one of the IFA event, and one of the IFAs told me that he is collecting very small sums from farmers. So that first of all, it was actually it created a lot of sense of responsibility that what type of money is coming into the funds, and hence there has to be a process, there has to be a very fundamental approach towards looking at this. So I think that's how the journey started. It took a bit longer time, but to cut it short, so I think what was decided was to uh, become what I wanted to be as a professional, and then this just kept following.
Mhm. So, Vineet, very interesting point you bring out about the IFA event that you went to and the fact that farmers' money was being collected. So, when you manage funds, is it more about getting into the top quartile decile? Is that the pressure that keeps you going, or is it that you have the money of so many people who are down the value chain and you must not let them down? Of course, somewhere both of these get married, but what's the higher pressure that you face when you're managing money?
So, see, Rahul, very frankly, you are also in the business for long. What you can actually control is not the output, but the input. And output is basically going to be the result of what actually get as an input, or what efforts you put as an input. So I think a lot of time and attention for me goes in being more qualitative, more fundamental. I can say investment is science and art. So the science part is something which we can sort of control. So really following those basic fundamental principles of investment, those matter a lot to me. And if we keep following those over a long period of time, I realize, and that's the experience also, that the output will follow. We don't have to worry a lot about the output, and just like any business, even the fund managers, they go through these cycles. I'm really not bothered about whether I'm number one or number two, but I'm more bothered qualitatively. Am I doing the right thing in terms of the portfolio strategy, stock selection, companies which we buy into? And if we do that, then I believe, and with the right temperament is also very important in our business. I think if we keep doing that on a regular basis and not get driven by the noise around you, then I think the output should also be quite satisfactory, is my thought.
Mhm. You speak about temperament, Vineet. Let me sort of look at both the ends of the market. I was reading your investment letter that you have put out on your website, and you talk about the hits and the misses. There have been some stocks that you've picked up that have been down 60, 70, 80%. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've also had Eicher Motors and Bajaj Finance that have done really well. So how does one control that temperament when you see the kind of valuations that Eicher or Bajaj Finance went to?
Yeah.
How do you sort of say that how do you get the courage of conviction to keep holding on? And similarly, what's the mindset when you see that you may have done all the hard work, as you said, the inputs, but the investment decision goes the other way and the stock is down 60, 70%? So when you're at both ends of the spectrum, how do you approach it temperamentally?
Yeah, I think this is a very important part of the whole strategy, where it is just not about buying good companies but also holding them through the cycle. And now it is just not one, but there are many examples where we have sort of bought very early on in the phase where I don't think there were hardly any institutional investors at that point in time. Not many small cap funds were also present, and we had that courage to go and pick up these stocks. And through cycles, the good part is the ability to hold on to these companies during the thick and thin of their cycles, and just keeping one thought in mind, that uh, is the company on track with what initially we had anticipated while we done our research in terms of our in-depth analysis, meeting management, meeting the channel checks and all of that. So are they deviating from their core principles? Are they deviating from their core thoughts? If not, then that is the first level of conviction, which sort of gets driven for us. The second layer is that now, having watched the market for many years, uh, what still continues to amuse me, or funnily, the whole PE business is something which people are using to as their own, in their own benefit, so P's, let's say, which goes up from 20 to 50 to 60, 70, 80, there is no dharma, I can say, for the P. So I think that is something which is out of your control. And what is in your control is to realize, are the fundamentals of the company really intact for you to just stay on. And once you have those particular parameters intact, then we sort of have just stayed put for long enough, for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And believe me, we have seen a lot many bad cycles in this phase. Only point is that we kept a single track to just keep thinking whether the company is on the right direction, on the right path, and is it the external cycle which is actually impacting the business. So if it is more of an external cycle which is impacting the business, then we are happy to add more during the low cycle, because that's the time when the valuations will also be good enough for one to buy and buy more. And that's also a time, Rahul, when you may see that when the stocks or sector is not in fancy, people are not willing to look at those stocks. If you want to buy, volumes are also available, how much ever you want to buy. So that's also not an issue. And when finally the sector or the stock comes into fancy, that's the time when people, they are really demanding those. Even if you want to knock off or book some gains, it's very easy to do that. So I think this is the most ideal situation, if you ask me, and which is where you require that patience, is, I can say. And I want to actually quote one example here. Now, we have been holding on to a small cap agrochemical company for almost more than 5 or 6 years. And you have also observed that in the last till up to 2018 or up to mid 19, most of the agrochemical companies didn't perform well. And the reason was pretty fundamental. We didn't see good rainfall. We didn't see the farmer income improving, and all the rural economics was not doing well. But what we were trying to just think about is the company on track in terms of their what they used to do in terms of their, be it product launch, be it strengthening distribution, be it the capital allocation, which is very, very important and critical. So I think on all of that, we had seen that the management were on top of it. So that just gave us a conviction that it's been 4-5 years of bad rural outcome, and cycle will play through. So we saw the stock actually going down 50% from the price we had bought. And after 3-4 years of pain and patience, now in the last just about 3-4 months, the stock has crossed it's much above the cost at which we had bought. So I think it just requires one to distinguish between, is the problem internal or is the problem external? Is the problem more to do with the cycle? That probably can be an opportunity to add. If the problem is internal, then we are also very quick to react. If we see that the capital allocation decisions are going wrong, corporate governance issues are cropping up, we immediately do our channel checks and take a decision to knock the position off as well.
Vineet, in your investment letter, you mentioned that you want to look at companies that have had a 5-year CAGR of 13% growth in EBITDA and PAT, 16% growth, 16% kind of ROCs or more, a 20% higher tax rate. Very interesting ways to approach companies. But the question again I come back to is, how do you, when you get a company like that, at what point do you say that valuations are becoming a concern? Because if you looked at an iShares or a Bajaj Finance, they exhibited those qualities even at their 52-week highs, say almost 5,000 in case of Bajaj Finance. So how do you know how to approach the stock then? Do you just keep adding because it keeps fitting your criteria, or at some point you take a call that despite it fitting all my criteria, the valuations are now becoming absurd and it could become a little dangerous for the kind of monies I'm running?
Yeah, so I think that is also part of the whole decision-making process. We are very conscious about the valuations, but we are also, to an extent, we have given ourselves freedom to actually think about the valuation in conjunction with the fundamentals. Now, as I mentioned that the companies go through their cycles from a beginning phase to a growth phase to consolidation phase and a degrowth phase. Let's say if those are the phases, and let's say you have identified the company way early in the cycle and they are just about to pick up the growth phase. And at the time when one had identified those companies, let's say the valuations were also reasonable, I would say, and the companies start growing. Now, at that point in time, it is very important to realize that the incremental information which you are going to get from most of the research analysts is going to be there is an additional 15 or 20% upside left. Not many analysts are going to tell you that there is a probably upside of 10 times in the stock or 20 times in the stock. So all the information actually stacked up against you. And what you need to keep doing though is keep rechecking the fundamentals of the company and the growth of the company which you have invested into. If it is a hyper growth company, you gave examples of few companies. Now, uh, as the company is going through that hyper phase, what tends to happen is that the analyst, they keep extrapolating those higher growth for 10, 15, 20 years into the future. You know, as we all know that the value of the company is the future value of all the discounted cash flows. But the funny thing about the discounted cash flow, I read somewhere was DCF is watching the galaxy through a telescope. If you just shift little bit, you get into a different galaxy altogether. So when that hyper growth is getting extrapolated, you have to be comfortable that all the analysts are going to keep upgrading the stock. They are going to have that incremental 20% higher target price on the stock, and the stock is going to get into a new zone of valuation. So you don't have to be worried if the stock has not, so let's say the range of the valuation has been let's say 15 to 20, stock starts moving to 25, 30, 35, 40, and I have practical experience, I'll narrate that as well. One shouldn't be worried and one should just keep watching whether the fundamental growth metrics are intact and that is the company having similar opportunities for growth. Now, the moment you get signals that there is a fundamentally the company is the same, but the growth matrix is likely to change because of some important aspect which you come across. That's it. And let's say the valuations are at whatever level, it may be 70, 80 times as well. That's the point we decide to finally take a call that we believe that the stock is at a very high multiple, we can say at the extreme end of the curve. And as far as the fundamental goes, the fundamentals are likely to deteriorate. So it is possible that the valuations may see a cut, and probably the stock may provide us an opportunity to get back into the name. So I can actually quote about one consumer electric company, which we had bought, I think in 2014. The stock was doing some 60 crore of profit and the market cap was 1,200 crore. So it was 20 times multiple. And 20 times, I think it was 2013, 20 times was actually a high multiple given that some of the FMCG and paint companies were at 30, 35 times. So for this, a small company, 20 times was still not a very attractive multiple, I can say. But it was promising a great opportunity, looking at the penetration, looking at the brand, looking at the leadership profile. And we felt that the company has a good play. We bought it at 20 times, and in the next 1 year, the profit which we were anticipating to be 80 crore came at 100 crore. And every quarter they were showing 35-40% growth. So, like I said, extrapolation took place and the re-rating started taking place in the name. The market capitalization started going up from 1,200 crore to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. I was just watching that game. I mean, for a brief period, it didn't perform, but when it started performing, it just started shooting up. And for 100 crore profit, I saw the market cap touch 10,000 crore as well. and but that was also the time where I realized that the overall environment is becoming slightly more challenging for them to grow. So the combination was high multiple, and now the environment becoming slightly dull. And that was the time we took a decision to trim our position, not exit, because anyways fundamentally we like the company, and we said that let us buy more when it comes off. So I think that those are the ways in which we try to look at the valuations, not get impacted by the upsides, try to play the cycle well. And only if we realize that the valuations in conjunction with the fundamentals are not making sense, that's the time we will cut profit or take profit.
Mhm. So, Vineet, just want to labor a little bit more on this point of valuation. And I come back to your investment letter where you speak about earnings growth and operating profit growth as well as return on capital employed. Uh, let's take Hindustan Unilever as a case in point. The return ratios are probably in excess of 100%, but the earnings growth and the operating profit growth has been, 15% plus or minus in various years. So do you pay that 50 times multiple because it is growing at 15% in its operating profit? Or do you pay that kind of multiple because its return on equity, return on capital employed is so high? How does one approach when you see a stock that is so expensive, but nothing in India is probably growing, at that pace at 25-30%, not on operating profit, not on PAT. So when you are talking about those hefty valuations, what are you paying them for?
Okay, so see, Rahul, I think it's a very important point there. And if I get confidence that this 15% growth is likely to sustain for the next 3-4 years or foreseeable future, uh, I'm okay assigning that valuation. But if there is risk to this 15%, and let's say if this 15% is going to look like a growth which is also equivalent to, let's say, an IT company growing at the same pace with almost similar valuation multiple, then the thought in our mind would be that instead of for the similar growth and very decent ROCE, if you have another set of business giving you almost a very reasonable ROCE, very strong dividend payouts, and equivalent growth, then it would make a case to sort of relook at those. So I think it is all, I would say, more relative, as you said, that if the point is that these businesses should give us confidence that these growth metrics should sustain going forward. If they are not, then we would be also wary of the higher valuations. I would say that there would be scope for these higher hyper valuations to see some bit of correction, and probably it may again make a sense when we see these hyper valuations correcting down in a low phase. And today, just not HUL, but most of the FMCG companies, if you look at their last 25 years of track record, the growth trends which they had witnessed in the early decade and now, I think they are currently facing a lot of growth challenge, and which is where the overall thought process of whether the hyper valuations will sustain or not is something which is a question mark.
I think your mid and small cap funds have done really well. You were obviously thrown into the limelight in 2017-18. Materially, after those funds did so well, I think your small cap fund probably went up almost 10x, your mid cap fund about 5x, and you outperformed the benchmark quite substantially. So, a two-part question. First, how did you feel when that happened? I mean, when you had to take the call that you can't take any more fresh investment, did you actually, when you started out managing these funds to where it eventually took you, were you sort of taken aback or surprised with the way things had turned out?
So, so as I said, Rahul, the only thought in my mind is to do the best in whatever you're doing, and I kept doing that. Uh, Actually, fund came into limelight, the small cap fund, then the micro cap fund. It was 2014, and let me also give you one background why temperament and patience is so important in our industry. The same fund, actually, if someone had invested in the peak of 2008, January 2008, if someone had made an investment in this fund till about 2013, the fund had given them 0% CAGR. So, if you had invested 100 rupees then, the CAGR was 0% in that fund till about 2013. And 2014 was a year when the fund actually turned 2x, gave 100% return. And the CAGR from that 2008 peak actually worked out to 13.5% or somewhere closer to that number. And that was a time also when a lot of money started pouring into the fund, which is very normal. Investors go by the past returns, and it's very difficult to predict which fund next year is going to be number one. So anyways, I think we started seeing massive flows, and as you remember, the category is still a category which lacks liquidity, which lacks volume. And what was also happening is that because a lot of money was chasing the small cap stocks, one very alarming trend which I had started witnessing was the so-called inferior companies, and even junk companies as we call them. They started, when I looked at market capitalization of some of the companies, I was really amazed, and I felt so bad that these companies, they don't deserve even 50% of what they are currently trading at. And if the flow of money kept at the same pace, then it will be very difficult for me to keep allocating capital to the type of companies we want to allocate, because those were really at very hyper valuation. So somewhere I started getting a feeling that, let's say if that farmer is putting money in that 2017 madness, what kind of returns will I be able to deliver to those investors? So we said that it's not a good time from the investors' perspective. And I think through that journey, I was, always being asked by even my management, the top management, are you able to handle those? I said, till the time I am able to deploy money in decent companies at decent valuations, I'm okay. But the day I start to feel that it's not happening, then we will take a call to shut the fund. And I think somewhere in that frenzy, we said that, let us put a full stop to the flows, because it is not anyways being reasonable to take money now and put in any company or any stock where we may see suboptimal outcomes. So I think that was the whole journey.
Hmm. So, Vineet, a very large part of the performance, or generally when fund managers are looking at stocks in mid caps and small caps, it's more a bottom up approach. It's a stock specific approach. As you highlight in your own letter, management quality and other things are very important. But you guys as a house took a reasonably decent call on specialty chemicals. Walk us through what was the thought process that you entered. I mean, some of those stocks, like you mentioned, you entered ahead of a lot of your peers in the industry, and then the institutional ownership built up over a period of time. How did you identify that sector, go top down, and what do you think are the prospects of that in the current environment when there's such a big anti-China sentiment, and it is the motherboard of the chemical sector in the world in a way. So A, your thought process of getting in there, and B, from here, what do you think the runway to growth is?
So I think way back then, so first and foremost, I think the chemical companies where we had invested, if actually one goes through and look through these chemical companies, I would say these are, if there are 4 or 5 different companies, they are like 4 and 5 different industries. All will have a very different matrix. Some are having 50% of their business as exports. Some are having one part of the business of which 100% is export. The chemical into consideration is totally different. Industries being catered to are different, ranging from agrochemicals to leather to textiles across the board. So it is not that there is a homogeneity in terms of the companies, but what actually was something which triggered our decision was when we were looking at these companies, what was happening is that not all the chemical companies, but some of them, these companies where we invested, they displayed few characteristics. One important characteristic was that they were all witnessing increased amount of inquiry in terms of their orders from international customers. Second, all these companies were talking of much better level of achieving much better level of ROCs in their business. Thirdly, most of the companies did display the true specialty nature, where their profitability, if you look at the margins of those businesses, we looked at the history of these companies going back 5, 10, 15 years into the history, and we saw that most of these companies were able to maintain a profit in a narrow band, which also gave us a good insight that these companies, they do have some bit of pricing power. Otherwise, if you look across many chemical companies, some commodity companies, the variation in the profitability will be huge, and which is where the difference between someone who's really a specialty, someone who really has a pricing power, and someone who doesn't have. So I think that those aspects, first of all, gave us some confidence that these businesses are really stable businesses. They are witnessing higher growth trend, and most of the management are talking of much better capital efficiency. So imagine if one of the companies which we hold in 2008 or 9, the management there had stated their objective of from a single digit ROC achieving 25-26% ROC, if I remember that number right. But it was high double digit number ROC, and having actually seen that company go up from that single digit ROC to now 30% ROC, that was real delight, because to achieve that in a perceived commodity type of a business is something which was very good, and also that was a sustainable ROC. It was not a one-off ROC which they had seen. And to just also think about what will be the future for these companies, because we don't understand chemicals, we don't understand these businesses. But what we were also gathering is that these companies are making huge investments year after year, which also gave us confidence that there is definitely a lot of growth which is there in the future, and which is why these companies are doing those investments. So frankly, those were some of the key points which enabled us to stay put. And I think through the journey, now let me also give some credit to my team people who are tracking this very closely. I think through the journey, we also faced some amount of dull phase for these companies in 2017. But again, not getting impacted through those noise, just staying patient and just seeing that the companies are doing their work properly. And let's wait for a right time for these companies. So, and last 2 years have been again phenomenal for them. So I think from here onwards, what I feel is that the opportunity is there for these companies. As we are interacting with these companies, they are still showcasing same conviction on their business. So that is pretty good in a way signal for us. Only thing is that the valuations from where it were have really risen from those levels, and I think, but considering the opportunity, the valuations are still okay. So we are still holding on. We have trimmed our exposure some bit at higher valuations, but we would like to hold those categories or those businesses for long enough. And if we see correction again, we may probably be open to looking at taking exposure in these companies again.
Vineet, I just want to talk about process here, and with your permission, I just want to highlight that a part of your process that you go through is that you don't do any external meetings on one day of the week, and you reserve that day for internal meetings and internal thought process, probably cutting out the noise at least for one day. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the ideas that you spoke about in the chemical sector presentation you had made in one of those internal meetings, and it turned out to be a multi-bagger for you, if I'm not mistaken. Talk to us about that process. I mean, how important is that one day when you connect with your team? What goes into that internal day, and how important is it from a decision-making process? I mean, what comes out of it to make you, thinking better or more aligned in your thought process when you have to pick stocks?
So I don't know how you came to know, but we have many more success stories coming out of those discussions. And actually, this has turned out to be one of our key, I would say, strength as far as the team is concerned. and I'll tell you how it works. So, every week on a Wednesday, we are cut out from the noise. We will all assemble. Even now, during this lockdown, we are actually doing our Wednesday sessions through the WebEx call. And those are the day. That's the day when we get into the details of each of the companies which the analyst may want to pitch, or there is a high conviction about those companies. And why it is essential and important is that there is, first of all, full attention actually is there. All the members are present, and whoever has any doubt, any questions, can raise those in that presentation. So actually it becomes a very thorough analysis. Now we also have skeptical analyst in our team. So he gets in his own forensic checks as well. So after let's say carrying out a very detailed due diligence, going through the presentation, going through the financials in detail, and then getting that conviction built, and then the fund managers may use their discretion to buy those businesses. I think that has played a very important role when we are working as a team, when there are so many funds, so many fund managers, but you still have to have a common process as such. So I think this filtration process, or the uh, a very strong way of approaching the research and filtering the stocks, I think that has worked well. The second way in which it is working well is that when all the sectoral analysts are present, it is also enriching their knowledge about different sectors, and that in a way also becomes a learning curve for them to eventually uh, become more mature and be ready to take up the role as let's say junior fund manager, and then senior fund manager. So that's what actually happened with us. When we started our journey, when we started these meetings, those gave a lot of insight into how a fund manager thinks. Why the idea is so compelling, but a fund manager is not willing to buy. What is his reservation? So I think all those aspects become, those nuances start becoming clearer, and it allows the analyst to actually emerge and grow and take up higher roles.
So, Vineet, you've been at DSP for a while. Can you talk to me a little bit about, how you were mentored? Who were the people that you looked up to internally or even externally? Any corporates or managements that you met over the years where you really felt these promoters stood out in your meetings while trying to understand the company. You walked out of the room saying, I've learned so much about how to be a better person, or how to be a leader, and how to manage things. So can you can you talk to me a little bit about the mentorship process, both internally and externally, and what sort of role have they played into sort of making Vineet Sambre who he is today?
So I think there are I learn from actually everyone. uh, you can actually learn from a tree also, to how to be humble, and you can keep giving to everyone. So I think in our business, learning is the most important thing. And when I also read somewhere that when one person is teaching, two are learning. So I think this is a process where we have to have open mind. We need to understand that you can learn from everyone. In fact, most important, I believe, I will speak about some of the people who influenced my thought process, but most important, I think, is to commit mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and never forget those mistakes. I think more important for for me, what has worked is that not forgetting what mistakes I had done in the past, and not repeating those mistakes. What I have very clearly observed is that people tend to forget the mistakes in a good cycle. If a particular type of a company does well only in a bull market, and actually goes for a toss in a bad patch, that company will come back again in a bull market, and there will be many buyers and many takers in that bull market, and you need to have that courage of conviction to hold on. So I think learning from our own mistakes also plays a very important role. Now coming to external people, as I said, in the initial phase of my journey, I got to work with very core fundamental people. So, Kisan Ratilal Choksi, KR Choksi was a firm where I was, after CRISIL, I joined there for a year. And I really admired that person because of his very core fundamental rigor, and his ability to keep memorize. I mean, keep so many numbers in mind. He used to give a prescription that read annual report a day was the prescription which he had. So I think, and plus that was also the time when, as I said, the whole mindset, equity mindset, was shaping up, and that was the time when I read Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch. I think that also helped me a lot. And through the journey at DSP, I think so. I like interacting with people who are really very fundamental, who have very solid understanding of the subject, and they talk with a lot of sense and a lot of data backing, and just not loose narrative. I would say Anup Maheshwari, who has been my boss at DSP for a long period. I used to look up at him in terms of his very deep understanding, deep knowledge, and the way he used to listen. I think that ability is very powerful ability, and immediately respond to whatever queries we had. So I think these are the core professional learnings which I had. But I would say even beyond professional learning, our market requires many other aspects: humility, flexibility, openness of mind. I think those come to you across if you see people across various fields, other sectors. I get influenced by my son's principal. When she speaks, I really love her hearing, and the way she puts across very simple things. So I think there are many ways to learn. It's just about how much we are open and how much we are able to grab. In terms of managements, definitely, I think this is one very this has been one of, in my process, this has been one of the most important aspect, where I believe that a good management can change the fortunes of a company significantly. And I get impressed by managements who have been very, very focused in their approach, who have clearly chalked out a strong plan for themselves, and they have courage again to follow that plan. They are passionate about their business. I have seen one of the investee companies, the the promoter there is, I think he's crossed 80 years, but he's still so active in his business, and he still keep minutely observing, where is my ROC going, why is it not touching 30%. So I think these are some of the tenets of I would say good management, and that's something what drives me and encourages me to sort of keep looking at these people.
Yeah, they say age is just a number, Vineet, in today's day and age. But
Yeah.
there are just a couple of questions that have come from the participants. I just want to throw them in. One of the questions is, for a mid-aged person with moderate risk, how does one build a portfolio?
See, again, these are very difficult questions to answer unless you get to know more. But I would say that just keep following up plan where you have exposure to a multi-cap type of a portfolio. You have an exposure to mid cap, but mid cap with really a and because the person is a age is in his favor today, so he can really look at investing for 7, 8, 10 years. And with that in mind, I even having a decent exposure to mid and small caps makes a case. But only thing is that it needs a lot of patience, because people say that I am patient investor, I am ready to invest for 5, 7 years. And then I ask him a question that if the market starts dropping by 10% every day for the next 5 days, will that 7 years, 10 years still stay, or will that get shaken? And that's where the real test of a true investor comes true. But anyways, I think a good combination of a multi-cap and a mid-cap portfolio would make sense. And if there is certain amount of risk aversion for those, I think hybrid type of funds is also suitable. So I won't want to let out any specific percentages, but I think a combination of all these three, depending upon the ability to sit through the volatile times should be a good mix.
So, Vinny, this is a hardcore market-related question. So, this
Market क्या लगता
40%,
है?
uh, in a way, but I'm not going to ask you that because I'll leave the business channels. But I'll try to frame the same question in a different way. So, are you worried with this 40% rally that you've seen in the market? Is the question. Does it sort of bring back memories of 2008? Is it happening too fast, too soon? Well, at a time when India is in a slightly recessionary phase. So I think I mean, there are 2, 3 questions along these lines, but that's broadly the thought process.
So definitely I'm worried with the market moves, and market clearly has shrugged off what we have gone through or what we are going to go through as well. And I believe the real test of the markets will come in the next 2 or 3 quarters as we see the normalization taking place. I'm sure there will be disappointment along the way. Uh, Yesterday, a mid-sized bank announced the numbers, knowing clearly that that's a bank which is vulnerable in that sector. Still, we saw the stock price dropping by 7-8%. So there is a reaction. It's not that people are building every possible negatives today in the stock price. And only thing I can say is that since the time this has happened, I have only seen the earning numbers getting cut more and more. Uh, so I would say that the next 2 or 3 quarters are going to remain very important. Whether if the market really stays at these levels, then I would say that people have really sort of ignored this year. They have in a way digested that this year is going to be a washout year, and people are really going to look beyond. Even FY22 may not be as normalized. It may be much beyond that. So I would say that we still have a lot of hurdles to cross. It's not as far as the economy is concerned, and I would say that there's a high chance of disappointment along the way uh, in terms of the earnings, expectation and earnings delivery. In terms of the whole this COVID problem itself, we don't know whether cities are going to take another round of shutdowns or whatever. So I think those are going to be the real good test of the markets as well. So frankly, the current rally to me is something which is unexplainable given the kind of situations we are into. And hopefully, if we cross another 2-3 quarters and if we stay put, then I would say that we have crossed some major hurdle.
Interesting thoughts. So, Vineet, I just want to circle back to where you started your career to where I am today. You started off as a sell side person. I have landed up as a sell side person. How do you see the journey of sell side having evolved from the time you started to where it is today? Do you think it's genuinely gotten more dissemination of information, more value add, or do you just think a lot of noise has gone up and sort of since you've seen both sides over a very long period of time, what are your thoughts on the subject?
See, one thing what I have seen is that there is a slightly wider coverage of companies now. There is a good sense of understanding as to what a fundamental guy is looking for. So in terms of the qualitative aspect, I think that is also well understood. But at the same time, I won't say that the noise levels have gone down. In fact, they have gone up. People still are looking for the next day or the next quarter expectation. People are ready to react to those, and that has only gone up. But I would still say that the coverage has become better. Qualitatively, things have moved up quite a bit. And my point is, Rahul, that in the world, I think you will see all types of people. I mean, and which is why, because you have so many people, because you have so many views, that's the reason you have a market where someone is able to make use of the imbalances there. And I think that's very important. It has to remain. All cannot become like have this market opportunities as well. So I would encourage that some bit of those aspects should also be part or parcel of the game. Otherwise, we will be out of the game as well. So, on that note, I would say that these participants are there. We have to just keep thinking that we have to work with right set of people. We have to work with right choice of ideas, right choice of quality of ideas. And I think if we have enough now to choose from in terms of the availability of those in the market. So I think that's a good part of the current sales side.
Mm. Before the lockdown, Vineet, were you getting enough time to sort of pursue your passion of swimming, or was fund management taking up all your time?
So that now I've stopped actually. So
Fund management is taking precedence over that. Anything during the lockdown that you've picked up as something beyond work while you've been at home for the last two or 3 months? Any new skill or any new hobby you've taken to?
no, so so I do a lot of this, which I used to do even earlier, yoga and meditation. Only thing is that the rigor of that has gone up now much better versus what it used to be then. So now I don't have to look at the watch and do that. I can just be on my own for that how much time I just feel like relaxing. So I think those things have been much better off.
It's been a pleasure listening to you, Vineet. I really do thank you for your time this morning. I think it's been a very insightful conversation into who you are as a person. Generally when we see you on business news channels, it's more about what you think of the market and what you're buying and selling. But I think this conversation's given our participants a good insight of who the fund manager is, who the head of equities of DSP is. And I think it's been a fascinating conversation. I've learned a little bit more about you today as I've gone about this conversation as well. I hope you've enjoyed being on. It's a slightly different conversation we've had.
No,
But,
Rahul. So Rahul, I mean, I would agree that is a good format to have where you can actually discuss more about the wider picture and not again linked to the noise what is there in the market. So I think this is a good format, Rahul. I think what you're doing is a good thing, and your background actually gives you a good ability to carry this out in a much better manner. So thank you very much to you and Nirmal Ban.
thank you
And
so much.
thank you all the viewers for being on the show.
And I hope to see you in person in the not too distant future. Thank you so much,
Sure.
Vineet. Really appreciate your time.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care. Thanks. Stay safe.